So a very good morning and afternoon to everyone who has joined us for the webinar this morning. Robots are already a very big part of our society and they interact with humans in ways that many people take for granted. The automation trend in Asia will only continue for the foreseeable future, and our webinar hopes to share some insights on the recent advancements in autonomous and collaborative robots and how they will influence key societal issues like aging populations, health, transport, and environmental change. My name is Nadine Sim, and I'm the Regional Director for International Marketing covering Europe and Israel. And it's a great pleasure for the EDB, the Singapore EDB, to collaborate with the Swiss Embassy in Singapore on this very exciting initiative. I'm delighted to invite Laurence Glass, who is the Science Counselor for the Embassy of Switzerland in Singapore. She plays a very important role of promoting and strengthening bilateral collaboration between Switzerland and Singapore in the domains of education, research, and innovation. Without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Laurence, who will open the webinar for us. Laurence, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celine. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning. Very warm welcome to you all to this event on robotics in the age of AI and social interaction. And thank you to our distinguished speakers and all the participants for taking part in this webinar. I would like to thank in particular the Singapore Global Network and the Singapore Economic Board for their support and collaboration in co-hosting this event. And may I introduce you now to His Excellency Fabrice Fillier, Ambassador of Switzerland to Singapore, who will say a few welcome words. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, dear guests and friends, it is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this event on robotics in the age of AI and social interaction, a fascinating subject. Like steam, electricity, and computers, robotics will be at the forefront of the next industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is being driven by technological breakthrough in fields such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, the Internet of Things, and robotics. Breakthrough that will transform the way people live and interact with machines. Robots are already in use in factories and warehouses, where they continue to win terrain. Already in 2020, with an accumulation of innovations in AI, sensors, and battery technology, robots have entered our life at work, at home, and in the public sphere. For example, they take inventory and shelve goods in warehouse. They can as well help stroke victims regain the use of their limbs and autistic children socialize. With the COVID-19 pandemic, demand for robots that can do human chores has skyrocketed around the world. As of early July 2020, robots of all sorts were directly involved fighting the pandemic in at least 33 nations, according to Robotics for Infectious Diseases, an organization of researchers. Robots now deliver food in England, tote supply in a Dallas hospital, disinfect patients' room in China and Europe, and wander parks in Singapore, reminding pedestrians to maintain social distance. The introduction of industrial and social robots in society, work, and homes speeds up various discussions ranging from the future of work and the impact on social interactions. On this note, I would like to welcome our distinguished panelists. Professor Nadia Thalmann, Director, Institute for Media Innovation at NTU. Mr. Anand Natarajan, Regional Manager, Robotics Divisions at ABB. Dr. Tristan Vouga, CEO and co-founder at TUI Eyes, Switzerland. Mrs. Miralab, Senior Associate, Technological Hardware and Equipment at EDB. And Mr. Tung Meng Phai, Director, National Robotics Program at A-Star. So welcome all and thank you for participating to this webinar. I'm especially happy to have this joint event together with Switzerland and Singapore. And so the panel will be moderated today by Dr. Andreas Deppeler, Deputy Director of the Center of AI Technology for Humankind at the National University of Singapore. So I will not be longer. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for opening this session. And I think we're all looking forward to a very exciting panel in a very short time. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Ms. Alberini Sim, who is the Regional Vice President of the Singapore Global Network, an agency that grows and builds meaningful and lasting relationships with our overseas Singaporeans and friends of Singapore across the globe. Over to you, Alberini.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Alberini Sim, and I'm the Regional Vice President for Europe with the Singapore Global Network. Let me just share this properly. Just give me a second. Yes. So the Singapore Global Network is part of the Singapore Economic Development Board, and I would like to briefly share with you and introduce you to who we are, what we do, and how can you be part of our community. Well, the Singapore Global Network, SGN for short, is an international community of Singaporeans abroad and our friends and fans of Singapore. So SGN is about building meaningful and lasting relationships with individuals, partners, and community groups to widen and strengthen the network in order to better facilitate the exchange of ideas, resources, and even talent. So today's webinar is one of our many offerings in partnership with the Swiss Embassy as well as the Economic Development Board. And many of our events will also include opportunities for our members to network with one another. So elaborating on our offerings to our Singapore Global Network members, we offer access to a professional community that spans across countries and industries. This includes an exciting and vibrant tech community known as Tech Plus 65, which is hosted on Slack, a virtual gatherings where our SGN members across Europe, America, and Southeast Asia can network. We definitely hope to have more of such webinars and business networking opportunities lined up this year, and we hope you can join us. We also offer a social community, not just within your area of residence, but across borders. We want to connect you to a larger community of fellow professionals and executives who are living and working in Singapore, or if you're residing overseas and are keen to connect with Singapore and our members. Lastly, we offer resources to help you understand Singapore and Southeast Asia a little better. We produce regular content on life in Singapore and the region. So if you are residing overseas and are considering to move to Singapore, we have resources such as relocation guides just for you. So do feel free to reach out and get in touch with us to find out more. And we hope you are as excited as we are in putting together today the seminar for you. And I'll now pass the time over to Lawrence, who will introduce our distinguished panel of guests. Lawrence, please.
Yes, thank you, Alberini. So I would like now to introduce Professor Nadia Thalmann. So Professor Thalmann is director of the Miralab at the University of Geneva in Switzerland. And she's also the director of the Institute for Media Innovation in NTU in Singapore. With her team, she has authored dozens of books, published more than 600 papers on virtual humans, virtual worlds, social robots, and human-computer interaction. In NTU, she revolutionized social robotics by unveiling the first social robot, Nadine, that can have mood and emotions and remember people and actions. She's the editor-in-chief of the Visual Computer and the Computer Animation and Virtual Worlds journals. She's a life member of the Swiss Academy of Engineering Sciences. Professor Nadia Thalmann, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurence, for this kind introduction. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. So it's my pleasure to present my slide. I just try to look how I can share my screen and introduce my presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. So my main contribution in the field of social robots is with Nadine. I have also worked in Switzerland. So since 15 years, I'm in the field. And what I like just to present to you now, just in this slide, is as I'm working on humanoid social robots, there are quite a lot of different social robots. Some of them are very realistic, like Nadine, or the other one from Osaka, and less realistic like Pepper. But let's say a social robot, the role of a social robot is to be able to communicate with humans and to speak many languages, to have discussions, and eventually to be a helper. So here you see the possible appearance. It could be at the discretion of the person what they like to have, more robotic, less robotic. But what is very important in social robots is, of course, the software. I estimate about 70% of a robot is software. Why? Because it's the capacity of a robot to interact. So if you have a robot, the first thing is the robot has to see, to be aware of the environment, to detect the people, to detect the objects, where they are, what they do, and also what they say. And then afterwards, the robot has to behave according to the situation. So it's quite a lot of work going on among thousands of researchers in these different fields. And useless to say that each of these software research fields or developments are absolutely with AI. It wouldn't be possible if we would have huge data sets and being able to simulate. Now, one thing also for the robot, what is very important, a social robot, is when the social robot has understood situation or what the person is saying, then the robot has to act accordingly. Now, I have two main applications I would like to speak about, in which Nadine, our social robot in NTU, has been involved. So why the first one, I speak about elderly. Why? Because if you look at this curve, we see that over time, the people who are born until age of 5 are decreasing in number. And if you look at the elderly, they are dramatically growing in number. We're now in 2020 at a junction of this inversion. Now the question is, in terms of society, if we have so many elderly, we won't have enough people to take care of them because they are more impaired, they need more support, even psychological support. So this is a problem in society we have to solve. And that's the reason why I think we could solve partly as assistive technology with the humanoid robots. As you can see, the example at the left side is very common. You have people even at home who feel completely abandoned. It's complicated to have a lot of interaction with them, visits and so on. Is also very costly. So if we would have an Nadine kind of robot with this person, then to talk, to stimulate, to show image, to put eventually this person in communication with the family, this person could grow and have a better quality of life. Now you see at the right side, two images. I would say it's a bit more on the future side because today no robot is able to give food to an elderly or to bath an elderly. Is too complicated task. But let's say in the future that will be happening and it will be a support. Now, the second domain I just would like to mention for social robots is all the domains of banks, insurance. Nadine has been working in several banks shortly, but she has been staying 6 months as an intern in AIA Insurance in Singapore. So what was she able to do? She was able to give advice to customers and also to be able to explain how to log in if people have problems, particularly more senior people, and also to advise about new policies. So it was extremely useful. We have done case studies, and it was very useful because the customer agents who worked next to Nadine said that between 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, there are peaks of work, and also they like to go to eat. So if they have this kind of helpers, social robot that can help them, so it could help a lot for them also to have the time to do more interesting work. So just to give you an example, I just show you a small video of the place where Nadine has been working. very much for your attention, and it will be my pleasure to answer questions later on in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia, for that very insightful presentation, really interesting, and we look forward to the chat and the Q&A later. So I would like now to introduce you to Dr. Tristan Vouga. So Tristan Vouga is the CEO and co-founder of Twice, a startup dedicated to helping humans reconnect with their community, thanks to wearable robotics technology, and a researcher with the Rehabilitation and Assistive Robotics Group at EPFL. During his PhD, Tristan developed the technology behind Twice and led the team that developed the exoskeleton to win a silver medal at the Cybernetics Olympics Games called Cybathlon. His research focuses on wearable robots and how modularity can help driving their performance, enhancing human-machine interaction, and reducing costs. Tristan is the recipient of multiple awards and distinction, including the Hilti Megatronics Award and the Pearl Prize. Tristan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So my name is Tristan Vouga, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Twice. And today I'd like to talk about robots and how they interact physically and behaviorally with humans. At Twice, we believe that the essence of life as a human is to use all our senses to experience and explore the world around us so that we can learn and share with other people. And this mission is made much more difficult for about 65 million people who are bound to using a wheelchair on a daily basis. It's an obvious loss of autonomy for them, but also a loss of social interaction. And what you might not know is that it comes with a lot of secondary health issues that are associated with the constant sitting position. So that's why our mission is to help these people reconnect with their community by giving them back access to life. So that's why we create these so-called exoskeletons. So this is one of our robots, one of our devices that's being demonstrated with our test pilots, Silke Pan. She's a circus acrobat who was paralyzed about 10 years ago. So she cannot use, feel or move her legs. But thanks to our device, she can stand up again and walk. So she used these crutches to control the device, and she can also stand and control her balance. As you can see, she can use the buttons on the crutches to change between different operating modes that correspond to different activities, such as going on flat ground, sitting down, getting up, and even climb stairs. It's the lightest exoskeleton in the world that is able to climb stairs with only 16 kilograms, including 2 hours of autonomy of active walking. The goal is really to help these people reconnect with the community, go back to places that they could not access otherwise, and interact with people at eye level, really being part of society. Here you see another example of activity we can perform, like really going for a stroll in a park, going in nature, accessing the places that are otherwise really impossible to access with a wheelchair. We always want to start from patients' requests, so to make sure that we don't develop a technology that's really out of an engineer's mind, but that really is for the purpose of our patients, for the purpose of our users. We really always start from a request, a special request from someone, from a particular patient. We never try to develop technology from our head out, but always from users out. That really is to make sure that we don't develop a technology that is unethical or useless. So here's a second example of robots, or it's a version of our exoskeleton that adapts to the desires and the needs of patients. In this case, it's a young man who came to us saying that he was not interested in walking because he could get around well with his wheelchair, but he really wanted a device, an exoskeleton, to go back up the mountain. So I don't know if it's a thing in Singapore, but in Switzerland, skiing is a big thing. And in particular, there's one type of skiing that goes uphill. So you can then go to places that are without, the infrastructure. So you can really go where there's no one else in nature. That's called ski touring. And that's a big thing in Switzerland as well. And he was really interested in in using the exoskeleton for this. So we took on the challenge to develop an exoskeleton for him. Within only 1 month, we could make a version that can fit ski boots, and so that he can put the skis back on and the boots. And that was a couple of weeks ago in Zermatt and in the snow. You could go back and in the deep snow of Switzerland, of the Alps. Another example is our exoskeleton can be used also for people who have different pathologies, not just paraplegia. So the two first examples were with people who are suffering from a spinal cord injury. So people who really cannot feel or move their legs. That's another example of a young man who came to us saying that he had lost his leg and he wanted to be able to run faster with a prosthetic. So he's wearing a prosthetic, but his muscles at the leg are smaller than they would be otherwise. And so he wanted an exoskeleton so that he could run as fast as he was able to run before his amputation. And so we adapted the exoskeleton so he can it can assist the only one hip. So here on the left side, it's assisting his left leg so it can run faster. So it's really the same exoskeleton, but just adapted to a different person's desire. And so you could run at up to 14.5 kilometers an hour. That's something we have not published yet. So that's something you're probably the first ones to see right now. And talking about artificial intelligence, probably one of the core technology behind artificial intelligence is machine learning, and that's exactly what we used because people were asking us if the exoskeleton could stand by itself without the crutches, and so we learned from humans how able-bodied humans. So this is not a patient; this is a healthy participant, and we learned how people stand when they're standing. What are the strategies they use to be able to stay upright? And we look at these strategies and copy pasted them in our exoskeleton so it can stand up without the use of crutches. And this is one with one of our patients. So she can really use her hands freely and without having to think about balancing with the crutches. And she can interact with people. She can use her hands for sports, for games, for activities of daily living, thanks to let's say a form of artificial intelligence that was used to teach the robot how humans move and how they coordinate to stay balanced. So with this, I'd like to close my my presentation and thank you for your attention. And I look forward to your questions at the end of the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tristan. I think it's a fantastic reminder that technology has to keep in mind the importance of user needs and not just to chase after technology for technology's sake alone. And I think we would love to cover a bit of that later during the Q&A session. Our next speaker now, we're very excited, has over, it's a regional manager for a company which everyone has probably heard of. He's based in Singapore and is from ABB's robotics division. Having joined ABB in 2002, he has held numerous senior roles across sales and marketing, account management, and local and regional P&L responsibilities. Our speaker has also been based in Singapore the last year, managing the newly created region of countries across Oceania, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa for ABB's robotic businesses. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Anand Natarajan, please. Over to you, Anand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. I hope you can hear me. Let me just share my screen.
Thank you.
I have the impossible task of following Professor Nadia and Tristan. Professor Nadia had some really cool examples to share, and Tristan had some inspirational videos as well. I'm going to be focusing a bit on the industrial application, of course, of robotics. But if you can bear with me, we will be looking at the human robotic interaction as well as the application of AI in the area of industrial robots as well. Julien, if you could just confirm whether you can see my slide.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone on the webinar. Let me first extend my thanks for being given an opportunity to join this webinar and share some insights around an exciting and relevant topic. For those of you not familiar with ABB, we are a global technology company that energizes transformation of society and industry to achieve a more productive and sustainable future. By connecting software with our robotics, electrification, automation, and motion portfolio, we push the boundaries of technology to drive performance to new levels for our customers. We are headquartered in Zurich, and we're present locally in about 100 countries with about 105,000 employees as well. So just a quick background to the company itself. I am, of course, going to be focusing more on the robotics business itself and some of the latest developments and future outlook concerning collaborative robots and AI. But let me start with a quick look at the history of robotics within ABB. We're one of the first companies to launch an industrial robot way back in the early 1970s, and we quickly expanded our range of the articulated robots. And rightly or wrongly, over the years, the image of ABB in robotics has centered around the industrial robotics space, especially on the automotive side. And to be fair, it is still a substantial portion of the business that we focus on. But we have, over the years, also focused on a lot of new developments in the area. For example, you see the Delta robots. We have a picking and placing robots that we have developed with really fast speeds. We have focused a lot on engineering tools and software that we have developed over the years as well. A couple of key acquisitions that allowed us to bring in machine automation that we then tie in with our robotics. But today, most of the discussion from my side would be centering, of course, on what we're excited about as new growth areas. In the last decade especially, we've done a lot in terms of developing a range of collaborative robots. And why collaborative robots become very important, even if they do not represent a big portion of what our market is today, is because we've been able to really bring in the use of robots into a truly cooperative or a cooperation mode with the human interaction as well. Traditionally, industrial robots used to be in fences. You couldn't approach them. You had a lot of safety barriers, and humans could not really be around when the robots were operating, high speeds, heavy loads. But over time, with the increase in the number of applications we've had as well, we moved into a mode of what is called coexistence, where you would not have fence between the human and the robot, but then they would still be working separate from each other. So the area was not shared between the two. And then that moved into what we call a collaborative space or an intermittent collaborative space, where there are certain areas. If you take certain applications in the industrial area, such as when you're polishing something, or there's a few parts that have to be brought in, and the robot is working on them while the human is doing something on the side. So intermittent collaboration was where then we were able to bring the robots and the humans into the same shared workspace. But in the last few years, what has really brought a lot of development in leaps and bounds is what we call cooperation with the collaborative robots, which means it's continuous sharing of the workspace between the human and the robot. That is, and we could look at different operations. We'll talk applications. We'll talk a bit about that in subsequent slides as well. So that represents sort of in a nutshell some of the key developments. We have a complete portfolio, of course, as I said, robots that can lift anything from 0.5 kg to 800 kilograms. And as you can see, also, we've got different types of robots in our portfolio as well. But again, just to indicate that today, the focus that we would be looking at is really the collaborative robots and what our outlook is in terms of where that's heading. It also comes at a very exciting moment for us, because just a couple of weeks back, in addition to the existing collaborative robots in our portfolio, we have launched a couple of new collaborative robots that take the human machine interface to the next level as well. So if I can just play a short video here, and then we will continue on the next slide. So we've introduced a wider range of collaborative robots, and just a quick sense on why we really believe that this is a game changer, and why we think from the industrial space, this really brings us more into a consumer space and more of the human robot interaction moving forward, is that enabling the people and robots to collaborate and safely work together brings in a maximum flexibility, it brings in safety, and improves the productivity, and not just in the industrial space in large manufacturing companies, but especially it allows the SMEs and the smaller operations also to be able to utilize robots in a safe and easy way in terms of also learning how to operate and program these robots moving forward as well. And that's a lot of the development as well in terms of the software and the area of the HMI, which allows people to be able to program and use the robots quickly as well. The outlook in terms of the collaborative automation also is that we will see substantial growth in this particular space, which is clearly one of the key trends that we are seeing all around, because the robots are getting easier to install, program, and use, and it really is removing a lot of entry barriers for many businesses that have probably not considered robotics in the past as well. Let me also quickly give an introduction to how we are operating here in Singapore with our, ABB in general as a group, but we'll talk a bit about the robotics space as well. But ABB has been present in Singapore for more than 40 years now. All our businesses are represented very strongly. Singapore acts as a hub for ABB, active not just in Southeast Asia, but in the larger region, supporting a lot of countries out of here. On the robotics side, we have a full business model that is not just a sales organization. We have our service, we have a workshop, and we support our customers through the entire value chain as far as our business is concerned. But one of the key things in Singapore that I also wanted to mention here that makes it interesting for our presence is the partnerships that we have with the ecosystem in Singapore in terms of innovation and really coming up with new applications and ideas here. We work with organizations like EDB to partner with them and bring in some new applications that we can pilot and introduce here in the market in Singapore. We work with the likes of ARTC, A-Star, and I just wanted to highlight here one of the most relevant applications we had worked on with ARTC last year, where they developed the COVID testing machines called the RAVE machines in Singapore, and we have our robots that go into these, and these are, each machine has a capacity of 2,000 tests a day to do it in a safe manner. It eliminates the human, it increases safety, eliminates the exhaustion, and reduces the exposure when the testing is happening, and increases productivity as well. So we have collaboration with the government agencies here. We work with universities as well in Singapore on pilot projects that we want to utilize the talent and the skills here, plus some of the startups in Singapore as well on areas around artificial intelligence and some of the new work that is happening here as well. So the outlook that we have here when it comes to artificial intelligence and the way forward is that we really think, I think Tristan mentioned this as well, today a lot of the work that's happening is more around the machine learning when it comes to AI and robotics, even in the industrial space. But moving forward, we definitely see the possibility, and we are working on it in ABB with our R&D, but we also work with, as I said, certain startups. There are certain partners that we have that will allow us to really move push the boundaries when it comes to robots learning and working in unfamiliar environments and being able to respond without having been programmed or without having the appropriate algorithms set up in advance there. So these are areas that we are definitely looking forward to working both here in Singapore as well as around the world as well. And we're looking at in Singapore specifically certain pioneering applications we would bring in, which again is highlighting collaboration between the robots and the human operators. We would be looking at applications like sorting and labeling, centrifuge tending, intralogistics. So a lot of areas in healthcare, logistics and warehousing where we believe there's a lot of opportunity and potential here in the industrial space, but for humans and robots really to work together. So that's in a nutshell how we see the human robot interface when it comes to the industrial space, but hopefully we'll have some time to have some Q&A also after the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan, for your perspectives on how the journey that ABB has in terms of roadmap and how you're even looking at collaborative robots as people come closer to a robot rather than it being stuck in the cage as per the technologies that we were used to in the previous decades. So we look forward to having more perspectives during the panel session later. Our next speaker has over 17 years of experience with the Singapore Economic Development Board, and he has held various positions across precision engineering, yes, and he is presently with the National Robotics Program to catalyze public-private robotics R&D partnerships. And he also supports the economic agencies to grow Singapore's robotics industry and national development. Together with him is from EDB's Technology, Hardware and Equipment Division, THE, that facilitates investments in Singapore from the manufacturing services, imaging and storage and precision engineering sectors. So with support from partner agencies, our next speaker will also develop a more vibrant and globally competitive robotics industry in Singapore. So we'd love to welcome Ming Fai, Mr. Tong Ming Fai, as well as Ms. Miralab for the next presentation on Singapore's robotics ecosystem. Over to you, Minnie, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jilin, for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody tuning in and esteemed fellow speakers. Let me take a moment to quickly share my screen. I believe it would be useful at the end of 3 very interesting presentations from proponents of robotics, technology, and innovation to summarize, or rather round up what we're doing in Singapore in the space of robotics, what our narrative has been so far, some of the key priorities and the things that we're looking at going forward. To begin with, I'd like to share about why Singapore has really been embarking on a robotics journey and narrative over the past several years. I think it's really from the perspective of drivers as well as benefits coming from robotics as a technology, as well as a all-encompassing social phenomenon that we're seeing more and more. Definitely, as other speakers have also alluded to, we are facing national imperatives and challenges such as an increasing aging population, as well as the need to sustain economic competitiveness across the various sectors in Singapore. Robotics will also enable us to actually improve service quality, empower our workforce, and improve workplace safety. These are some of the key reasons we've been looking into robotics. The ways in which we formalize this approach has been really along the lines of different opportunities and different priorities across the TRL levels. So one of the first thrusts that we've taken to really accelerating robotics development, deployment, adoption in Singapore has been starting with the thrust of mass adoption. So this is for technologies that are more or less commercially ready and are actually ready to go out into the operational world, but require a certain amount of intervention, perhaps to educate the end users or to build up a robotics ready workforce. The second thrust is to really do with accelerating the development and commercialization of certain technologies that may not be so operationally ready, but require a certain degree of innovation and added commercialization work. This is done through a second thrust, which really involves promoting innovation through our island-wide living labs and test beds. The third approach has to do with really identifying and developing deep and differentiating robotics R&D capabilities within Singapore. So this is in partnership with our various research institutes and institutes of higher learning to essentially develop something that is anchored in Singapore and can act as a core for robotics development and deployment going forward. So this has been the key thrust of our approach to proliferating robotics within Singapore and to also play as a globally competitive industry in the world. So where are we today? One of the key results we've been seeing in our efforts towards robotics has been a continued momentum in driving adoption. The International Federation of Robotics actually reported that in both 2018 and 2019, Singapore achieved the world's highest robot density in terms of the number of industrial robots per 10,000 resident manufacturing employees. So this is a measure that is quite indicative of the maturity of some of the end users in Singapore, notably in the manufacturing industry, and a very promising statistic that indicates more interest to uptake and adopt robotics going forward as well. In terms of accelerating solutions development, this is in terms of the living lab model, which I was sharing about earlier. Across the various end-use sectors, there are leading public and private end users who are keen to actually take on some of these technologies, test bed, and scale up such that it is suitable for both the domestic and global markets. We have seen some good early results with private sector users from the manufacturing and logistics space, some of the public sector institutions in healthcare, transportation, and the built environment. In terms of some of the innovation and R&D outcomes, these are some of the priorities and areas of work that have been ongoing. These are in the areas of robotics enabling capabilities such as navigation and perception, human-robot interaction, systems level capabilities, as well as some of the newer differentiating areas such as reconfigurable robotics, universal grippers or end effectors, as well as assistive robotics and wearables. We're also undertaking work in robotics domain-specific areas such as healthcare, the built environment, including facilities management, as well as the environmental services. Some of the early results are visible in the ecosystem that we have been building up over the years. It is a vibrant and growing space comprising of product companies and OEMs, some of the traditional automation houses, as well as homegrown robotics companies and startups. Supporting that is an infrastructure of enabling companies such as components players, software players, and systems integrators. All of this is augmented further by a network of talent and research partners, as well as industry association and whole of government efforts to coordinate the ecosystem. I'm joined today by Mr. Thalmann, who's from the National Robotics Program, which acts as a coordinating alliance across government to build deep differentiating capability and put Singapore on the world map in terms of robotics and robotics ecosystem. So what could we look forward to based on this early traction and vibrant growing ecosystem that we have built up for robotics in Singapore? So this is a question that we are answering in tandem with some of the key global trends for robotics, as well as the drivers for having augmentation of the workforce. So one, we are considering to ride the global industry shift towards service robotics, as Anand was alluding to during his presentation. Robots today have been very much traditional automation tools that have been serving productivity, efficiency, and safety needs, but we are seeing robotics moving more towards becoming intelligent assistants that are more responsive and adaptive and part of society as a whole. We will also be considering how to expand the various robotics use cases and application areas in Singapore and globally by building up software differentiation in Singapore. This could be in terms of encouraging open source robotics innovation through the likes of ROS and building up Singapore as a global ROS hub, but also in grooming newer groups of companies that can actually enable more end users to program and use robots without necessarily needing to code as well. One of the key examples is a local company known as Augmentus that has developed an AI-driven no-code solution for robotics to be used. We're also looking at building up systems level and infrastructural capabilities to enable development and deployment of robotics at scale. So a key example of this is the work done in the robotics middleware framework developed at the Center for Healthcare Assistive and Robotics Technologies at the Changi General Hospital. So this is enabling interoperability of different proprietary robotic systems as well as healthcare systems to account for things such as traffic management, fleet management, and emergency response in a case where you have different systems interacting in the same environment. Lastly, we're also looking at prioritizing the development of robotics talent, community, and industry alliances. We note that many global clusters and robotics centers of excellence around the world are characterized by a great deal of collaboration and co-innovation together with the various ecosystem members. So this is a key priority in terms of building up talent, encouraging industry consortium and communities, as well as industry alliances such as the Robotics Alliance for Action under the Emerging Stronger Task Force in Singapore. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation.
Thank you. First of all, any additional questions on the different stakeholders in Singapore's robotics ecosystem, please don't hesitate as well as me after the webinar as well. We could direct you certainly to the relevant partners who can co-innovate with you in Singapore. For the last section of our webinar, we're delighted to have with us today a fantastic moderator who is the Adjunct Associate Professor and Deputy Director of the Center on AI Technology for Humankind at NUS Business School. At NUS Business School, our moderator teaches courses on technology, innovation, data value, and digital strategy. His research also focuses on the economic and societal implications of artificial intelligence. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Andreas Deppeler, please. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. So I'll start the session with the speakers. And first of all, I would like to go through some of the robot examples that we saw. And I would like to go back to Nadia's presentation on social robots. I noticed that in one of your first slides, you showed different examples of social robots. Some of them looked like humans and others didn't. Could you perhaps summarize what is the advantage of having robots that look like humans, that are humanoids, that have human features, as opposed to examples that are not, that are more abstractly shaped?
Thank you, Andreas, for these very important questions. You know, I think it depends on the people. For example, myself, I'm like the people in Switzerland in the 18th century. You know, in Switzerland, we had this automaton that looks beautiful and they were able to do a lot of things. We can see them in museum, and already at this time, they were motivated to make beautiful beings to whom eventually you can communicate. For me, if I like to have a robot in my third age, which will come soon, then, I mean, not so soon, hopefully, I would like to have a robot that looks fine, like a statue or something I like, and to be able to interact with beauty concepts. Some people would prefer a robust robot or another shape, or maybe not at all with a human. I think it's very personal. What I would like to summarize in my answer to you, it depends on the people. We should not impose anything. I mean, you know, if you like to interact with a frog that speaks many languages, but okay, a frog with a special hands that can do things, why not? I mean, for me, personally, when I speak to a human like you, I prefer to see a human face. And if you have to be replaced because I have nobody to talk, but at least another robotic human, I prefer is a nice, gentle, robotic human that has empathy. But of course, it can be, you know, the robotic aspect can be defined according to the taste of the people, and maybe we should have many different shapes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that also is a segue to Anand's presentation on the ABB history of robots that started in the 1970s. And we've seen a progression from industrial robots that had to be separated from human workers towards more collaborative robots. So maybe just to clarify, Anand, to what extent would you consider these collaborative robots to be social? And what role does machine learning play in getting them to interact with humans in a safe way?
Absolutely. Thanks, Andreas. When we look at the social element of the collaborative robots, one area is the fact that they are interacting, as I said, in a truly continuous mode in this sharing a workspace with the human as well. But also, a lot of these collaborative robots have applications in areas that probably in the past nobody would have even imagined. We have robots today that are acting as chefs in restaurants that are actually making food and cooking and serving that to consumers. We have robots that are acting as baristas and serving coffee and able to give advanced choices. We have VR robots serving ice cream in Australia that I had been there last summer when we were there as well, 2 summers back, not last summer, of course. So there are areas where robots today, even from a traditional industrial background like ABB has, where we are actually reaching out into consumers directly, where we are able to, and these are robots that are not difficult in terms of programming the application. You have easy ways you can do what we call lead-through programming. So a person with no background in robots can also just hold the robot hand in a safe manner. There's a lot of inherent safety features that are built in, which make sure that if there is any movement that happens, the robot is actually able to identify whether this is a part of the movement that it is being trained to do, or is that something which is dangerous and could potentially hurt the human operator as well. And to your question on how much does artificial intelligence and machine learning play in, a lot of what we are doing in the area of collaborative robots actually goes to this element. Does the robot can be programmed to begin with as a part of the deep machine learning, the ability to discriminate between what is a natural movement that the robot has to do as a part of lead-through programming with the human moving the arm, versus can it make a difference to, well, this is actually not a part of what I'm supposed to do, and it's something which is an action that can hurt the operator or somebody around it, and is able to differentiate and discriminate accordingly and react. So the social element, I would definitely think around the collaborative robots is the ability that it's reaching out to a much bigger end user base than we have in the past, and is able to interact with them in a much safer way. And as the research around AI goes up, it would definitely mean that the robots would also be able to understand how to react in these unfamiliar situations and still keep the safety as one of the most important factors when they are around the humans as well. So that's probably the way that we would think about this topic.
I would like to follow up on this concept of collaboration, because it seems to me that if we take the view that there's technology and there are robots and humans have to adapt somehow, then maybe we lose some element of this human-robot collaboration. So my question maybe goes more towards the policymakers, maybe to EDB, or actually to all of you, if you have a view on that. How should we enable humans, that was also an audience question, by the way, to be able to work with robots? Because I think humans are still not used to this new way of collaboration. So what do we need to do as managers, as entrepreneurs, as policymakers, to set the scene for more human robots or human AI collaboration for that matter? So maybe Miralab, if you have a view on that.
Sure. Thanks, Andreas, for the very thought-provoking question. I think in the element of encouraging collaborative or human-robot interaction, it starts, I think, with setting the stage and messaging correctly to both the end users of robotics as a company, as well as the human workers themselves. I think one thing that's very important is actually having the narrative of robotics empowering people as opposed to threatening their jobs or replacing them. We have seen evidence of robotics actually taking away some of the menial tasks or something that actually causes them to exert themselves physically or put themselves in danger. We've also seen robotics enabling them to get more work done, cover more ground while having more of a supervisory or a value-added function. So some of the messaging in terms of robotics empowering them is something to set the stage. Then in terms of actually sensitizing them to using robotics, definitely training is a key element, exposure, bringing on the robots on a trial basis, things like that. Also the element of enabling them to be end users without a high technology or a knowledge barrier, encouraging things like no-code robotics and not putting in place so many, I guess, academic or infrastructural barriers to using robotics would be a good step. I'll also let my colleague Mengfai add on.
Yeah, thanks, Minnie. So I think the only point I'll probably just add on is picking up on your last point. I think it's also about making, I think, robots easy, right, for people to work with, right? Because I think oftentimes when I think the people approach to say, okay, work with robots, right? In their mind, they think about actually the need to program, very difficult to program the robots. Actually, how do you handle the robots and all that? So I think there's also an element of actually making the robot easy to use, right? Easy to work with. So for example, I think we've seen things like, voice commands, right? You're able to give voice commands, and if the robot is able to interpret those voice commands and act on those commands, then actually it makes it easier, right, for somebody to actually work the robots, and hopefully that lowers, I think, the barrier for people to be comfortable, I think, using robots.
Yeah, you say be comfortable. I guess another word that we could use is trust. So my question would be, and maybe I can play that back to Nadia and Anand, both from a university and from a corporate point of view. What do you do as technologists to build trust between humans and robots for collaboration? Anand, do you want to start?
Okay. So from our side, we do a lot of work in addition to, of course, existing users and being able to get them trained and ready to use. We have been actively reaching out for quite some time now, all the way to schools and universities in order to have a conversation. It's not just about putting a robot there and allowing the students to play around with it and get comfortable with it as well. But it's also having a conversation with the educational institutions on how can we be a part of the journey of making the students comfortable and understand the benefits of working with the robots from an early age, because we have to understand that working with the robots are helping offset shortages that we have of skilled and willing talent in certain countries as populations age, the demographics in certain cases, but it's also helping create better, more rewarding and higher paying jobs, and taking away certain activities which are dangerous, dirty, dull or delicate, which traditionally humans have been working in. But it's important to have that conversation not just with the policymakers and with the government, but also starting from a very early age. We do that in a lot of countries where we reach out to the schools. We talk about what could be a part of the curriculum that we could contribute to. And I think the earlier we start and we are able to engage right from school and university days, I think the level of comfort, the level of being ready to consider working collaboratively with robots, but also at the same time getting ready to upskill ourselves as a workforce moving forward as well, I think it was a very important point. So that's something that we've clearly been focusing on for quite some time now.
Nadia, from a university research perspective, what would you want to add to what do you do? What research have you done on how to build trust or improve trust between humans and robots?
Okay, what I would say is we have always case studies, and I would just speak of a today case. We have brought our Nadine social robots to elderly home in Singapore, and I think for now is still on the development phase to know what is trust. So that means we make a full study to know how the elderly react to the robot, what do they like in comparison with real people. And you know, I feel it's like the vaccine. We should do this in many places and really see if they accept it. And according to this, we should modify maybe the behavior, what they do, and so on. It's not to impose, but the question of trustability is very important. What are the features we have to give a robot in order the others are happy to be with, and how much can they help in specific functions where nobody is there? So what I have seen, I saw very few concrete examples of social robots around the planet. Our example with AIA Insurance is one of the only one I know for a robot to have worked 6 months in a company, and they were quite happy. They asked us if we can give or sell the robot to them. Unfortunately, we have only one. We couldn't leave our robot to them. But let's say it's a lot of studies to be done. And to my opinion, it will take some time, maybe 5 years, until, when I say 5 years, is to not say 20 years and not 1 year, but it will take time. And I see with our study in the elderly home, it takes time. And we have to repeat this maybe to all elderly homes and also in other countries. And out of it, we can make a tool that is trustable, answers needs, and respectful to the people they should help.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Anand. I would like to move to Tristan and ask him about another type of collaboration that we have seen in the videos that are very impressive, where humans and machines become one, almost. So my question would be, how is that situation different from what we just discussed in terms of social robots or collaborative robots when it becomes one system? And what kind of additional ethical issues do you see arise as a result?
So thank you so much. It's a really interesting question. I think the collaboration is really central in what we do. And it's actually a science per se, understanding the underlying concepts and rules that govern human-machine interaction. And for us, I would say that what's really critical is to see or sense the paradigm shift between industrial robots and collaborative robots. In particular, like the way we thought of robots before where external factors were a disturbance to the robots. So robots were taught to reject perturbations. They were taught, how can we reject all external factors and keep their work, keep working in the same direction. And there's this paradigm shift where the physical interaction between the robot and the human is so close that instead of rejecting the perturbation, the main source of perturbation being the human inside, we have to assist the human instead. I think the biggest challenge there is to accept a system or subsystem in the parts, which is impossible to predict. It's impossible to make a model of a human user. It's impossible to make a design with a model that is going to predict how the user is going to perturb or disturb the robots. So we have to change completely the way we design robots. Be more reactive, accept more feedback from users, accept to fail. We cannot make models and make designs and predict 1 year or 2 years ahead of time and make an assembly line for the robots and then roll it out and then see that actually it fails, because we have to be reactive. We have to try things and let the robot fail and accept our mistakes and embed this feedback into the next design.
Maybe one question on the so-called brain-machine interface, because that comes up a lot in the context of exoskeletons. And it's also, I guess, one of the dystopian futures that some people have about post-humanism, that robots and humans will become one at some point. So in your research and in your products, Tristan, I think you use some brain-machine interfaces already. So could you perhaps explain a bit what they are and the kind of needs you see or the potential uses you see for them in the future, not just in rehabilitation, but maybe also in other applications?
Yeah, the brain-machine interfaces are really an exciting technology. I've been working on this at Duke University in the past, developing a brain-controlled exoskeleton for actually monkey animal models, but where the monkey could actually control the device in real time. So just with the thoughts, could control the position of the legs in real time. And I think we're still far from having this technology available for everyone, but definitely the enhancements and the improvements, in particular by the startup company Neuralink, founded by Elon Musk recently, where my colleagues are now involved, I think is really moving faster than we are ready to address the ethical issues. So so it's really exciting. The potential is huge. I think it's really the same. It's really the same question as with fire. Any technology has the same issues. You make fire. You can make steam machines and industrial evolution with it, but you can also make guns and wars and fighter jets. I think it's really a matter of policy. It's a matter of evolving the public, the general audience. It's a matter of educating people. We need to make sure that the population is aware and understands the stakes before we roll out technology and before we let people participate in the discussion. I think this kind of seminar is instrumental for this task and mission.
Thank you. I would like to address another angle of collaboration. So we have spoken about collaboration between humans and robots. We've spoken about human-machine integration, almost in the case of exoskeletons and brain-machine interfaces. But there was also an audience question that I thought was quite interesting. How do you make robots collaborate? And I think that refers to what some people call the Internet of Things. And it's maybe also a question now directed to Anand and Nadia on how do you make sure that robots work in tandem, that they work in a synchronous manner, that they communicate with each other? And how can these robot-to-robot communications help you to solve concrete problems in industry, in academia, in social life?
So I'd put a short reply there, a brief reply there as well. I think a lot of the development that we've been focused on over the last few years is firstly, for that communication to happen, you have to have the sensors in the robots and then a way to connect them. And we have inbuilt that connectivity, remote connectivity, as one of the standard features in all the robots that we are selling. And talking ABB in a more general sense, it's one of the common things we're putting in for all the equipment that we sell, that they should be able to connect and transmit data. Right now, we are at a stage where it's more information being shared in terms of the operating conditions, the errors, the number of start-stops. So it's a little more basic in terms of where you can kind of look at how it has been operating over a period of time. So it's kind of information being sent either through to be stored on a cloud or on an edge device, which is at the site itself. But with more sensors that we're building in and with more features that we're building in for a digital layer on the robots and on some of the machines where the robots go in as well, it would really allow us truly to take it to the level of not just sending information one way, but being able to share richer information. It's not just the few KPIs that we are kind of looking at right now, but being able to truly share information and communicate among the robots themselves rather than with a sort of a centralized system that we have now. And that is a key area of what we call the fleet management of the robots as well, and especially in areas where you have a large number of robots that are operating, for them to be able to talk to each other and in a sense collaborate among each other, not just with the human operators there as well. So it's definitely a key focus area, and I must say that we would among the different things that we are planning to roll out in the upcoming years, this is one of the most exciting areas where we think more developments are likely to come out sooner rather than later to allow this communication to happen in a much more productive way.
Thank you, Anand. Finally, maybe a bit sensitive question, but it did come up also in the Q&A. What if robots at some point in the future become our companions, our romantic companions? Can there be something like love between humans and robots? And if so, what kind of ethical concerns perhaps does this raise? So Nadia, is this something that you are working on or you are thinking about already?
Well, you know, if you see, I don't know, a TV show and you like an actress or an actor, you have some bond with this virtual person because it's virtual. You have a speaker on a TV show, you like it. Or for example, I like Joe Biden in the US. For me, it's a virtual person I never met. But the fact how he acts, I have a bond with him. Although he has no opinion that I have a bond because I appreciate what he does. I just give extreme examples. So if you have a robot like Nadine, now it's 7 years I'm with her. Of course, I have a bond with her. That means she progressed like a child. You work day and night in order she can be able to move the arms properly, smile according to somebody smiling, and so on and so on. So you get a bond. But of course, what we also add, and the research is going on this direction, the robot should always not play completely the role of a human. The robot should always say, I'm a machine. I try to help you. The machine, you created me thanks to your great human capacity, but I am a machine. I cannot go more than that. And keeping with some rules of behavior, politeness, and all that. A lot of people are starting to address these issues, and I think we will need more and more people in social sciences, in law, to be able to deliver robots that are absolutely ethically correct in their behavior. So myself, I see robots to help me, you know, if let's say I would be in some way handicapped or I feel completely alone, I can learn Chinese, would be a dream. Nadine teaches me Chinese when I'm at home, and she remembers what I know, she has patience and so on. So this kind of thing I like. Now, on my personal level, I would not like to have a lover as a robot. So in no case. So it depends again on the test, the taste of the people. I mean, if robots have to become lovers when people have nobody is another story. At least I cannot answer for that because I'm working on robots in the way that they are helpers and support when you have nobody and eventually to grow and to learn. So the rest, I leave others to answer.
Thank you. But actually, we probably could go on for another few hours, but we are already at the time, so I'm afraid I have to leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for participating, for your contributions, and I hand back to Julie.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And I think 2020 had an unforgettable year for many, many countries. But it's inspiring to hear from Dr. Andreas, as well as our panel of speakers, how innovation in areas like AI, as well as robotics, continue to accelerate because of the pandemic as well. So I think these are all very, very encouraging things. I wanted to end off this webinar with a very short video that was created in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis last year. And since then, Singapore has worked very closely with our partners in Switzerland and around the world to, really emerge stronger from the crisis. So I'm gonna just play this very shortly. Thank you. Sorry, I think we can't hear anything, Jesse. No, I think it's fine. I think what we'll do is we'll drop a link after this. A big thank you to our distinguished speakers today and to the Swiss Embassy in this webinar. Singapore is keen to partner global organizations to co-innovate energies from Singapore that are uniquely human-centric. Thank you for joining us again, and reach out to any of us or the speakers here. Any questions? Thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.